I'm Barry Matherly, this year's chair of the International Economic Development Council and also president and CEO of the Greater Richmond Partnership in Richmond, Virginia. So this year I have the unique opportunity to be chair during our 90th anniversary celebration. So it's been very special, and that's why we wanted to make sure we celebrated not only the profession, but also the professional, the people day in, day out in most communities, a lot smaller throughout the U.S., and really try to celebrate them. And so we declared it the Year of the Economic Developer. And so we're trying to do everything we can to raise their awareness and their communities and the work they do in the communities. I think one of the big things is economic developers show you possibilities that others did not think exist. There are economic developers working in areas that you would think no business would go to, or a part of a city or a quarter that people thought businesses would no longer be attracted to. And through their vision, through the toolkits that we give them, actually start to sell a vision to the community of what could be. And from that, they're able to create opportunities in places that we expect them to be, but also where we don't expect them to be. So the biggest satisfaction I get, bar none, is if I get a chance to get down and get into a manufacturing facility or an office complex where we help that company either grow in that community and add those jobs or come into that community. And there you see that they don't know that you had anything to do with it. You're just another person in a suit usually walking through the office or through the manufacturing plant. But just to see them working and to see the buzz and everything going on there and the positive effect it has on them and their community is just so rewarding, and instantly it's why you do this job. I think it's very important because in what we do, we work with a lot of different partners. Economic development is a very collaborative effort. And at the end of the day, when an announcement comes, you're usually going to see more of the elected officials on the podium, the governors, the mayors, and they deserve that credit because they do play a role in economic development. But it's usually the economic developer just off the side of the camera, or maybe taking the picture in a smaller community. They're the ones actually taking the picture that goes into the press release or whatever. And so in all of this, sometimes it gets lost what the role of the economic developer was. And most times, all of these projects started with an economic developer. They finish with a very collaborative group of people, but that opportunity started with an economic developer. So I think it's very fitting, especially during our 90th anniversary, to go back and just kind of recognize the work that we do and take a chance to maybe step in front of the camera once in a while. I think to be a student of the profession. One of the things that I think is just amazing now is the opportunities they have to learn. Over the years, we built a big foundation that they can now look into, that they can work from, the conferences that we have. So what I encourage them always to do is, if you're a student of the profession, you'll always be at the top of the game. You'll always be in demand. You'll always be up to date. And you'll always have a job. I think when you look at the profession as a whole, it kind of goes back to what we were talking earlier, is to be able to create opportunities. And each community asks for different opportunities to be created, depending on what type of community it is. But it's the role of the economic development profession to make that opportunity occur. And then others have to be involved, to make sure it happens. In the end of the day, it's the companies that actually provide the jobs, that actually put in the investment. And it's others who put in the infrastructure. But the economic developer provides that intersection where all that collaboration can occur. It's interesting. I started this career, my first job, as a director of economic development. And so in that role, smaller groups, you're at the kind of the top of your profession there. So I've always had to reach out, and that's where IEDC has become very important, because especially I started in rural economic development, is that to be able to come to conference, to be able to associate. So I didn't have a single role model, but what I had is an organization in IEDC where a lot of leaders that I've interfaced with over the years, and especially board members and past chairs, that I've taken a little something from all of them. And that's helped me kind of build who I am today. I think more and more it's the political nature of everything we do in this world, and especially in the United States. And so we're trying to equip economic developers to work in that arena, sometimes a little more uncomfortable. But it's one of those things that's a part of what we do. It comes into play. And even though it's something that isn't embraced, it's something that you have to do to create those opportunities. Well, two ways. The first is just the foundation it builds for all economic developers. This was a second career for me. So I had one career, and then I decided to shift over to economic development. And all the tools, the body of knowledge, everything was provided by IEDC, where I could just plug into that and help myself quickly learn about the profession. And the other is back to these leaders. Everybody's been very accessible. I've talked to past chairs. You can talk to them at conference. You can talk to the current chair if you'd like to. But the leadership has always been accessible to the whole profession. And so there's a great sharing that goes on and helps build people in this profession. The projects seem to run together over time, and they all become more like your children. There are very small projects I've worked on that stick in my mind. They're very, of course, the large projects. But at the end of the day, they all have this equal weight to me. Because at the end of the day, you're looking at one person who has a job that you're making eye contact with as you're going through whatever facility it is. It could be an office of 3 people, it could be a facility of 1,000 people. But you're looking at them as individuals as you walk down through those facilities. So at the end of the day, they're all equal, even though they're all over the board. Yeah. I love to see the bulldozer. I love to see the bulldozer because when we work on a project, we might work 3, 4, 5 years working with a company, especially a new company, to convince them to come in. And then there's the big ribbon cutting and all the press and all of that. But at that time, nothing has still happened. That site is still sitting there. And really, not to the day I see that bulldozer go out there and start working the site, am I like, oh, thank goodness, it's going to happen. Because not all the deals work out in the end. But once I see the bulldozer, rarely does it stop from there. I think what makes a really good economic developer is first being a student of the profession. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to know the basics. You've got to know what's the current topics. But you also have to be someone who can take a lot of rejection and keep pushing a vision and an idea and an opportunity forward for people to start believing in. And that's one of the things that if you have the knowledge and you have the passion to get out there and try to sell this vision, to sell this opportunity, that people will start believing. And then when it actually happens, of course, everyone's going to say, well, we knew this was going to happen. But it really starts with those two things working together. Businesses are constantly changing, and the workforce is constantly changing, and how people work is constantly changing. And so as economic developers, we're aware of this. And not always is it going to be a bricks and mortar project. There are a lot of projects where people are free agents, where they're contractors, where they're working from home or just sometimes in the office. At the end of the day, though, what we're there for is to help people. And it doesn't matter if the person's sitting in an office building or sitting in home. If they have that opportunity and they're being productive, then they're contributing to the economy. And so as economic developers, we need to look for new ways to bring that about. We spend a lot of time now working on fiber in communities. The old days, it was all about water and sewer and how to get that infrastructure in. Now it's more about fiber and communications that allow workers to work from anywhere they want. But at the end of the day, it's still building that worker and building the community. So we are constantly held to a standard of how many jobs we're creating, how much investment is coming into the community. And that's very important. And every economic development group has some measure of that they're working on. But at the same time, we're also building infrastructure, we're building resources, we're building opportunities for future generations. And they don't always happen in 1 year or even 3 or 4 years or a political cycle. They happen sometimes over decades. And so one of the things we have to keep in mind is the long and short-term view. In the short term, people need jobs, and we do everything we can to make sure they have those jobs. Communities need resources so they can build schools, they can build parks, or whatever they decide to do with that. And that also comes in from revenue that companies provide that we work on. But at the same time, there's got to be something out there where you're building something far greater, a community that people want to live in 5 or 10 years from now. So a lot of that groundwork is done by economic developers now. So it's a dual role, making sure you do enough to take care of the current needs of the community, but also making sure you're doing something that the future needs of the community are also going to be met. I think no matter what profession you're in, you should take time every week. Just put apart 10 minutes, 15 minutes where you just think about what you did right, what worked, what have you progressed on that week. Just positively reinforce yourself. So it's easy in the 90th year where we're all doing it and we're all celebrating. But as it fades, there's still an opportunity for you just to think about yourself and where you're going and what you want to accomplish. And just make sure every day you're taking time to thank yourself for the job you're doing in the community. And as you do that, then you'll build, and others will thank you after.